Thank you everyone for being here. I want to especially thank the Congresswoman Anna Isho, Mr. O'Connor, and Congresswoman Leftus and Mike Thompson. I'm sorry if I got some of the names incorrect. I also want to thank everyone who has come here to hear our story. Finally, after 30 years, we have had the chance and the courage to speak out. After listening to my sister's story, I'm still shaking, looking at the personal pain that came through her words and her eyes. This is the story of many Kashmiris, about 300 to 400 people who were killed, gruesomely so. And I stand here to tell you my personal story. I've been fortunate that no member of my family was killed, but the circumstances that led us to flee our homeland, which we are originally from 5,000 years of history. And here's what happened, and here's my personal story. In 1985 and until 1989, I was a med student. I, along with Dr. Sridhar Kaur here, we went to Kashmir Medical College. We saw a lot of changes in the environment at that time, radicalization, extremism. We saw more and more people turning into being more Islamicized and also turning into more religious and more frantic. We Kashmiri Pandits were minorities, maybe less than 5% in the 95% of the Kashmiri Muslims who were at the helm of the affairs there. We compromised on a whole lot of things. We stayed silent, did not utter a word. We did not engage in any confrontation with them. We just wanted to live our lives peacefully. Starting 1989, things started to change. This was the year when the threats became very personal. And as you heard, that Kashmiri Pandits, however, started to be targeted. They were kidnapped, they were tortured, they were killed, they were dismembered, their eyes were gouged out, their fingers were cut, women were raped, and for every one of these gruesome killings, thousands of us would fear and they would be terrorized. In 1989, I was walking to the hospital one day when I was surrounded by 4 bearded men. And they menacingly came towards me and put a finger on my chest and said to me, "Why aren't you covering your head? Where's your scarf at? And if you don't wear a scarf tomorrow, we will burn your face with acid. And by the way, Kashmiri Pandit girl, you're going to be a Muslim in a few months." I was terrified. Of course, since that day, I did not leave my house uncovered. I would wear a scarf around my head. My dad, in the meantime, was getting threatening letters. He was a high-ranking official in the government, and he was getting threatening letters. We ignored them. Again, we wanted to live in the valley. Fast forward December of 1989, there was a historic change in females. I was in GYN OB clinic, and we were actually, one of the persons just came and locked us in, me and my colleague. And after 2 hours when we were let out, we asked them, why had you locked us in? And they said, now these guys were looking for females who were Kashmiri Pandit females who are teaching bad stuff to the females. We were actually running a reproductive clinic and teaching these people, teaching the females of their reproductive rights. Obviously, that was never done again. A few weeks later, I was going to the hospital when I was caught in a crossfire. Again, scared, I went to the dean of my hospital, Dr. Gajadhar, and asked her, I said, I cannot work like this. This was January 1990, and I said to her, ma'am, I cannot come to work like that. And she said to me, you have taken an oath. You are a doctor. You cannot stay home. If you stay home, everyone else will. So I continued to go to work. And that gets me to the night of January 19th, which was the day when Kashmiri Pandits were left with no choice but to leave the valley. Earlier that week, the conditions were so bad that curfews had to be imposed in order to safeguard the lives of people. That day in the morning, it had started to get worse. There were so many slogans coming out of the mosques. And as the day progressed, more and more people defied curfew and came into the streets. We were holed up in our houses. Our parents had locked the doors from inside. The windows had to be almost blinded. We had put sheets over the windows so that no movement could be perceived from outside. The whole day, we were very, very fidgety and scared. As it became, the dusk set in, conditions became worse. The slogans from the mosques became louder and louder. Most of the mosques, which was 1,100 mosques in the entire valley, were broadcasting slogans like Dr. Malik earlier said, "Reliv, Reliv, Saliv," either join us or flee or you'll be dead. Other slogans were, "We will take Kashmir with the girls and the Batnis," that means the females, "and kill all the men." The other slogans were, "What we want here is Sharia, we want Nizam-e-Mustafa. Everyone else is a kafir, and kafirs, that is us, had to just leave." In this situation, when there's the drumbeat of hundreds and thousands of voices, and you are holed up, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of you in a house, there is no other option but basically to think that you're going to die any minute now. And each Kashmiri Pandit household was waiting for that. We knew that it was a matter of time when we'll be just gunned down. What at that time, it was kind of more scary was, my parents told me later, is not that the fact that we were going to be killed, but the fact that we didn't know what they were going to do with the girls. The atrocities that they were capable of was unthinkable. My neighbor's daughter, they put their daughter outside in a shed in hiding. In January, the temperatures in Kashmir is below 0 degrees. She was kept in a shed outside just to hide, so that if the parents were killed, at least she would be saved and her honor would be saved. That night, Kashmiri Pandits had to decide one thing: to stay and be killed, tortured, raped, and dismembered, or to flee. To flee and leave thousands of years of their ancestral heritage back. To leave their homes, their jobs, their properties, the education. The kids had to leave their schools, to leave everything and just flee. And we did the later. We fled. Next day morning, my father called one of his best friends and said, "You have to save us." He was a Kashmiri Muslim. And he was kind and gracious enough to tell my father, "I don't have enough room for 4 of you, but I will take the girls out." And that's the day we left Kashmir. That was January 20th, 1990. It's been 30 years. My father and my mother would join me later, a month later. What happened to us afterwards? We went to places outside of Kashmir Valley. There was no preparation for us. There were no camps. We ended up in the backyards of temples. We did not have any money, we did not have any clothes. I have stood in lines to receive aid. The first day I received 2 blankets and 1,000 rupees, which is about less than $20. And after another week, I stood in the line again to receive another aid for $20. The first month, we had absolutely no avenue. After a month, I applied for a job in Delhi and was lucky enough to get into a hospital there. Other people were not so lucky. They still had to struggle. After a few months, And in the first week, about 50 to 60,000 Kashmiri Pandits fled their homes, leaving everything back. In the next 6 months, 300 to 400,000 people would just leave without a trace. There was no mention in the newspapers, there was no mention, and there was no policy of the government to see what will we do to these refugees who have come out of their homes. There was nothing. We, after months, knowing that no one is listening to our story and no one really cared about us, we lifted ourselves up. We went to places wherever we had any avenues. We got up, and the past 30 years, we have reconstructed our lives. We have gone to countries like New Zealand, to Australia, to England. We have resettled in the rest of India, and some of us who are here in US of A have reconstructed our lives here. After 30 years, we are talking about our story. I don't think I have talked about this even to my children. In these 30 years, a lot has changed for us. We are extremely proud to be American citizens, whoever is an American citizen here. We are grateful for this country to give us an identity and give us our honor back. But my past is an open wound. The injustices that have been done to my community, to my ancestors, that injustice has not been heard yet. My grandparents died in exile. My parents are still in exile. They want to go back home. And that's the question, will we ever go home? And in the end, I just want to end by saying that, sorry. Justice delayed is justice denied. I hope that there are some people who are listening to this and will take up our case. Thank you very much.